Hi, Bill. Welcome back.
Hi, Bobby. Great to see you as always.
Yeah, great week. Wonderful weekend. It's finally spring in Minnesota, I think.
Yeah,
I
at
don't want
least
to
for
say it
now.
too early. Yeah,
Yes,
there'll probably be one more snowfall, but at least it looks like spring outside today.
it was nice. For those of us who celebrate Easter, a
Mhm.
lot of times that was one of these for Halloween and Easter, the little kids would get all dressed up and then they'd have to put on lots of winter clothes over the top of it. So this year
Yeah.
they did not in Minnesota for those that did. So it was, yeah, it's nice. It is
Yeah,
definitely nice.
it always puts a bit of a damper on activities when you have to hide the Easter eggs under the snowbanks.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you've been traveling quite a bit and doing a lot of advocacy for our profession and probably traveling to some places that are a little warmer than here. I understand that you just gave a talk at Beckers Healthcare 13th annual meeting on innovation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things, as you and I've talked about a lot, is that my position at Mayo and my new position has given me the opportunity to be on some see the labs from some different vistas, if you will. And so this is the Beckers Healthcare Conference, so it's really about healthcare and health systems and some of the major economic factors that are kind of playing in, Beckers. And so, yeah, it was a great opportunity. I was very delighted to be asked to actually give a presentation on innovations in the diagnostic industry and kind of what they mean for patients and what they mean for healthcare, right? And so, I think it was illuminating even there because it's all about healthcare and healthcare systems. And yet there's not a whole lot of discussion from the labs, although labs are a huge part of that, right? So
Mhm.
again, to be there as a pathologist speaking at that venue, talking about what's really happening with diagnostics for people to think about, both from a healthcare perspective, number one, for what it means for the patients, number two, and of course, all of that's woven together by the economics that would drive decisions and how they're reimbursed. And so it was, I think it was a really good opportunity because I got a lot of questions afterwards. You could tell that some light bulbs went off just because people don't think about it unless someone with a background like mine coming from the labs is there talking about what's happening. The other, of course, is it's good for me to learn and think about what's happening outside the labs that could really is going to impact us significantly. And the one thing that I took away from that was there was a lot of talk at the keynote platforms about Chat GPT.
Mhm.
Mentioned more on several occasions, I should say, about how this is probably the biggest innovation or revolution in computing in the last 20 years. I think one person said since basically the Windows API interface that made your IBM touch style computer run like it does now with Windows. So it's really, really big. A lot of talk about CVS and other non-traditional entrants into healthcare as well. But yeah, so lots of big things out there. Bottom line is being there helped them think about laboratories, but me being there made me think about, wow, as a lab leader, what are some things that aren't even on my radar that really I need to be thinking about right now?
Yeah, it really is amazing. There's so many things going on, and Chat GPT, GPT-4 is very amazing. And I would encourage everyone to go and try it out. It's free right now. It's going to have a huge impact on medicine, on laboratory medicine, probably on our society as a whole. And we need to be thinking about this. And I'm so glad that you're there at these sorts of institution or events representing the laboratory. I see this in my daily practice as well. When you have people that are, say, in the hospital, focused on hospital work and not thinking about the lab, it's so important for us to step up and insert ourselves, if we have to, into the conversations.
Yeah.
And you and I have said before, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. We have to be part of these discussions, both so that we can learn about what are the concerns of our colleagues, what are they struggling with, but then they can also hear what we're facing, what challenges, and how we can help be part of the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine in your role in leadership with CAP, and you have other leadership roles as well, even as a department chair now, for dealing for Rochester and for our lab medicine and pathology. Are you hearing similar things in the leadership circles that you're in that I'm hearing like a Beckers?
Yeah, I definitely am, Bill. In fact, I'm going this weekend to Washington, D.C. for the Pathologist Leadership Summit, which is through the College of American Pathologists. It's a really important pathologist leadership opportunity where we actually go to the White House and we meet with our elected officials and we talk about things that are really important to our profession, such as reimbursement, expanding the workforce, regulation and oversight of lab developed tests. And we have to be there. Again, it gets back to being at the table. Otherwise, pathologists in laboratory medicine aren't necessarily seen because we're not the people that are seeing patients directly. We're part of the whole team, but we may not be immediately present and immediately come to mind. That's why we have to step forward to be part of the conversation. So that'll be a really interesting weekend. We're talking about pay cuts, understanding the payment of pathologists, and strengthening our healthcare workforce, really essential topics.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting as you're talking and we're having this conversation. One of the things that you and I have talked about for, gosh, many years now is that as a laboratorian and laboratory professionals, our role in healthcare is to take all, not just to run tests or to look at slides or whatever, but to take that information and make it understandable to a provider, to a clinician that's there with the patient or to the patient themselves, right? And I think that if, in essence, what we're talking about is doing that same activity at scale. So just as with the individual patient encounter, they need to understand what testing they should be performed and what are the significance of the results. That's our role as laboratory professionals and care providers. But then at sort of the macro level, helping those who are making big decisions around whether it's public policy or payment or any regulations, that they really understand the role of the laboratory, how the laboratories work, what's their role in healthcare. I know FDA has been very open to even visiting laboratories so they can understand it better. We have to think in that way, as that's part of our job, is helping, decision makers understand. And part of that, as you were talking, I think about other diagnostic specialties like radiology that may not suffer. Now, there's some things that are common, like deep downward pressure on reimbursement is everywhere across medicine. That's not unique to labs. But there's others, if you think of radiology, the diagnostic specialty, that maybe doesn't have quite the same challenge in getting that visibility. I think a lot of that's because labs, there's a lot of different entities that provide laboratory diagnostics. There's academic labs, there's pathologists within academic labs, there's private practice pathology groups, which are many of them that are very, very sophisticated and highly functioning. Then there's commercial laboratories that are part of the mix. Oftentimes we speak individually, and that actually in some ways undermines us a little bit. And I think that's one of the things we have to start to think about in leadership is how do we present this holistic view of laboratories? Because any lack of understanding of what component of what's a more complicated ecosystem really makes it difficult for us to get our messages across.
I agree. We have to really talk amongst ourselves and find the united messages that really bring us together and then deliver those messages to payers, to elected officials, to people who are going to be making decisions that are really going to have an impact on our practice. And you mentioned having, say, the FDA, others come and visit our laboratory. I think that's really an important area, having people actually come and see what we do. And as part of the Pathologist Leadership Summit and Hill Day, as we call it, when we go to the Hill and talk to our elected officials, we do invite them to come and visit. And we offer up our labs as an opportunity for a place they can come and visit to see what we do. It's really important to actually showcase that.
Yeah. And I think now is the time because, as you were talking, the other thing, of course, is just when you talk about singular voice, there's the labs and there's the diagnostic manufacturers. And of course, those groups have traditionally not done a lot together. Matt South, who was the CEO of Roche Diagnostics North America, that's now the CEO of Roche Global Diagnostics, he and I actually co-authored a position piece just on the importance of laboratory testing and their availability as part of a driver of equity and access to healthcare. That was kind of a relationship born in the pandemic. And there's one thing I think for any of our listeners to think about is that, look, you can already feel the fatigue of people want to move on from COVID and including talking about diagnostics, and yet we still have visibility. So now's a great time for you to write a letter to your local Congress, government representative, whoever that might be, state or federal, and say, come visit our labs, come take a look at what we do. It has a huge, huge impact, right? Right now, for instance, there's the Saving Access to Laboratory Services Act, or SALSA, is out there to help give us it has been reintroduced in Congress, that would really prevent the really onerous cuts that would come from PAMA. There's a grassroots effort out there called Stop Lab Cuts Now, I think, that you should avail yourself to if you want, because those things, I can tell you, make a huge, huge difference. So don't feel like it's just someone like Dr. Pritt or Dr. Morice. I think everyone has a voice, and you should really think about how to use it.
Yeah, that's a great message, Bill. And I'd say that you could also start locally with your CEO, your medical director of your hospital or healthcare facility. Do you know who they are? Are you on speaking terms with that individual? Maybe this is a good opportunity to reach out to them and say, hey, would you like to come and tour our labs and see what we do? You have to be at the table, and sometimes you have to insert yourself.
That's right. I couldn't agree more. And it's super, super important.
Well, best of luck at your upcoming talks. I believe you're going to the Executive War College to give a presentation. Again, thanks for all the representation you do for us for laboratory medicine and pathology.
Well, I mean, it's a real honor to be able to out there representing you and Mayo Clinic, and really all of us, all my colleagues in our profession. It goes back to something I said a long time ago, and now more than ever, if we're entering into the age of data and big data, and of course, ChatGPT is the next manifestation of that. Why labs, if we generate 70 to 80% of the quantitative data in anyone's health record, we should be front and center of those conversations, but we're not going to get invited. We have to be a little bit more, we have to be knocking at the door and maybe even pushing a jar. I have to get a little bit of my pet Gretzky's personality of, making sure that even though you're small, you're not going to get neglected. So
that's right. Yeah, your little dog Gretzky is great. And yes, he makes sure that he does not get neglected. We may have to do that as well, although probably not by barking, but
or dropping balls on your feet or other his tactics, but he could be a good mascot for us as a whole.
I like that. That's a great idea. Well, you'll have to tell us how your presentation goes and what they're talking about at the Executive War College at one of our future meetings. And for now, we'll log off, and I'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, as with the end of every conversation, I enjoyed it, and I think there's going to be a lot more for us to talk about.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill.
Have a great week.